Good day, my dear students. I am very happy to see you. And this will be the recorded class for week 4 for our management skills for supervisors. And this class that I'm going to be presenting today is going to be very quick too, hopefully less than an hour. It's about creativity, right? It's our chapter 3 in our book. And also hopefully by the time you are watching this lesson, hopefully you have already created your 10-term glossary, okay? Because that's going to help us a little bit more. Okay, very good. So let me start sharing the presentation. And remember also to take notes, okay, in your notebook, as you will have to upload your notes, all right? And here we go. Yes, here we go. Perfect. All right. Presentation, here we go. Okay, so as I had mentioned, this is going to be chapter 3, solving problems analytically and creatively. As you remember in our previous 2 chapters, they were focused mostly in our self-awareness, right? They were also focused in how we from inside we could develop first knowing ourselves, learning ourselves, working on our own emotional intelligence, our own mental health, and how important those 2 skills are for managers here in Canada. Now, chapter 3 is one of the first chapters in which we start dealing a little bit more with how we interact or how we act, but in relationship with, in this case, our organization, all right? And it is a fact that solving problems analytically and creatively here in Canada is an essential skill for all managers. Now, our objectives, as you were able to see in our book also, are to increase the proficiency in analytical problem solving. I'll go back to this objective of today's class in a minute, and I'll tell you why. Recognize personal conceptual blocks. Enhance creativity by overcoming conceptual blocks and foster innovations in others, right? In our team members, etc. Have my coffee. You know, I can't live without my coffee, right? Okay. So let me refer to our first objective and why I want to make a little pause here, and please pay attention here. You know that I do not believe that studying a book or reading facts in a book, that's not going to help us develop skills. That's not the way to develop a skill. A book, we can learn facts, we can learn theory. And actually today, this class that I'm going to be sharing, yes, I'm going to be addressing some points from the theoretical part, the skills learning section of our book. However, once again, the objective of our course is not the learning of this theory, because, and I keep seeing these things all over, knowing facts doesn't make you a good manager, but putting and making sure we put all this real life situations, real life skills, real life cases and real life case studies, that's the only way we're going to develop a skill. A skill is not learned in an hour class. Skill is not learned when reading a chapter. That's not how we develop skills. The first thing to please, could you please write this down in your notebook, please, for week 4. The first thing we have to do when dealing with chapter 3 is first take some time to analyze ourselves, right? Analyze ourselves as we did in chapter 1, and try to understand first, do I consider myself to be creative, to be a creative person? And if not, what is it that is becoming a barrier for me to develop my creativity in solving problems? Now, I'm going to talk again. We're going to start with a very important introduction. And I think the introduction, the first part of this class, is going to be the most important, because the rest, as I just said, you can read about it, right? And reading about it, yes, it's important, but the most important and relevant fact about this chapter 3 is how you have to be aware of what steps, what actions, what techniques do you need to put into practice so that you can really increase your proficiency in the skill called analytical problem solving. That is the most important objective. Okay, so I hope and I'm sorry it took some time to explain this, but it's very, very important. Now, as important as point number one, objective number one, is objective number two, recognizing my own personal conceptual blocks. As we have also talked about in class, we all have different ways, different forms to express ourselves. However, when we professionally are in a situation in which we must prove our managerial or manager skills, problem solving is going to be essential, not only for you to get hired, but also to get promoted. And the creativity you need to put into your problem solving, that's what's going to make you stand out from any other candidate, from any other collaborator, from any other worker, again, when you're trying to get all those promotions, etc. And this is a skill that without it, you will not be able to be hired as a manager, because all job profiles, all the descriptions from job profiles in Canada are always going to include, you need to be a problem solver. You need to be a person who has initiative to solve a problem. And again, as we move on in this first part, I'm going to be emphasizing that part a lot. Enhance the creativity by overcoming conceptual blocks. This goes by hand. One of the problems that we're going to talk about of why we have these blocks, it's because we probably haven't had the opportunity to have our creativity enhanced, promoted. We haven't had the opportunity to have our creativity bloom. And the important thing here to understand also is that it's never too late. We also talked about the fact that all these skills, you don't have to be born with them, as long as you have the willingness to develop them. And I am sure, I know you, I'm sure, at least I can tell, most of you, my students, I know you have this willingness to develop this creativity within ourselves. And we're going to talk a little bit also about some of these blocks or some of the causes of why we're becoming less creative and less efficient when solving problems. You know why it is? And I know, I love AI. we use DeepSeek in class, but let's face it. One of the reasons why our problem-solving competencies have been affected negatively in the last few years, it's because we have something which is AI that helps us immediately solve problems without us forcing ourselves to think about solutions first. And AI is going to be here forever, okay? And it's going to be here to help us. And we have talked about these too. And again, you know I love AI. I have nothing against AI. The problem here is, how do I use AI in such a way in which using AI, I can still, from what AI is telling me, I can still put my own thoughts, my own creativity, my own opinion, my own. That is exactly what's going to make you unique. That is your value. That is going to be your value as a manager. Making sure you can still do things better than AI can ever do. Many, many things. And we have also talked about that in class. There are many things AI cannot do yet. And again, I have nothing against AI. We use it a lot in our classroom, right? However, this is affecting us. And you know, I can almost imagine many of you going, yes, teacher, I think you're right. I know. So finally, also, we're going to talk about how we can foster innovation, not only within ourselves, but also with others, okay? So that's why I stopped a little bit here. That was very important. Now, why is problem solving essential for managers? I'm going to read a little bit and I'll explain. Problem solving then is a crucial skill for managers, directly impacting team performance, productivity, and organizational success. In other classes, you have talked about the fact that our objective as managers is to help our organizations be more efficient so they can make more profits. Of course, most of organizations, they have a financial goal to reach, but without this, that cannot be reached. Okay, that cannot be achieved. Effective problem solving then allows managers to guide teams, eliminate obstacles, and foster a positive work environment. So it's a combination of many benefits that it's going to bring, that problem solving is going to bring. Now, I don't have to tell you this because I know many of you have been applying for jobs, and actually you are interviewing right now for your term 4, yes, internships. And as you're going to see, and remember, I also told you in past years, some of the organizations, some of our students have participated as interns. They have given us, some feedback. And part of that feedback is, you know what, this intern that you sent me from VCC is not creative, is not talking to others, is not independent, does not know how to solve basic problems. And that's why this chapter is so important, because we are only weeks away from starting our internship practice. And how is that going to take place if we do not understand that, yes, I have a few weeks to still work on the development of this relevant and crucial skill. And as you can see, hiring managers look for candidates to problem solve rather than hard skills. Hard skills is exactly what I told you. Yes, you can pass an exam, you can pass a test with 100. That's beautiful. But hiring managers are not going to be concerned about your grades. They're not going to be concerned about any of those things. What they're going to be concerned is they're going to give you a situation. How would you solve the situation on your own, by yourself? And they need to know we're independent and we have this confidence to solve problems, this ability, this analytical ability to solve problems. Now, another example, right? 10 good problem-solving interview questions. These are questions that you're going to be asked, or maybe you're already being asked as you are right now going through your interviews for your internship, right? So for example, I'm just going to give some. Share a situation where you predicted a problem with a stakeholder. How did you prevent this situation from escalating? That is a question that you need to know. Therefore, you need to have the ability to recognize. The ability of the skill of problem solving comes along with many other skills and competencies. First one, being able to recognize, being able to observe, being able to listen, being able to read, to know, to be knowledgeable of what's going on with Vancouver, with legislation, with Canadian legislation, acts, etc., etc. So the more we know, the better you're going to be able to answer many of these questions. I'm going to read another one just as an example. How do you determine when to solve a problem on your own and when to ask for help? This is a basic question that I would definitely ask if I were in recruitment and selection, as I have already been in recruitment and selection many years ago, right? If I went back, these are questions I would certainly ask. Another one. Share an example of a project or task that initially seemed overwhelming. How did you approach it, and what strategies did you use to ensure successful completion? So you see, we need to be able to answer these questions without DeepSeek, without ChatGPT. And that is a real situation that I always address with my students, my dear students like you, because sometimes in term 1 and 2, we did rely a lot on AI. Therefore, we don't know how to answer these questions by ourselves. We have actually been in the classroom when I ask you questions, and many students don't know how to begin to answer. That means you urgently need to work on developing the skill of creativity and putting your creativity into problem solving. Otherwise, once again, I keep telling you, how do you graduate from this course when you can show me that you are able to answer these questions by yourself, connecting with your own life, with your own experiences? And this right now, what you can see here, these are certainly questions that we're going to be using towards the end of our course, because in our final exam, we have a written exam, we have our team exam, but we have also an individual solo oral exam in which I'm going to be interviewing each one of you as if you were interviewing for a management role. And these are questions that you should be able to answer. So start getting ready. Chapters 1 and 2 were to help us be aware of ourselves, mental health, self-awareness. But this is the first chapter in which we start learning. I need to make sure I am able to develop, to show that I can do this, so I can graduate this class, and therefore I can also do a good job in my internship next year. Okay. Now, this is also another section in which I'm going to stop a little bit because it's also relevant, because it gives us the context of why am I putting and paying so much attention into this relevant skill. I'm going to read a little bit and then we're going to talk about it. The perspective taken in this chapter has a bias toward Western culture. And I am bringing this from the end of the chapter. If you already did your glossary, you're going to find these international caveats in the end of our skill learning section. But I brought it to the beginning because we have a specific characteristic in our classroom, and that is that most of us, we are international students, we are immigrants. So this has to be part of the context in which we place everything we're going to be talking about. Otherwise, this is not going to work, okay? So this focuses, the Western culture is always going to focus in analytical and creative problem solving, yes, as problems, oh, sorry, I went ahead, as problem solving as methods for addressing specific issues. Enhancing creativity has a specific purpose, to solve certain kind of problems better. Creativity in Eastern cultures, though, on the other hand, is defined very differently. Creativity is focused less on creating solutions. So let's stop here and let me make sure we understand this first. Canada, the US, England, the Western world. When we talk about problem solving, we need to bring our creativity to put all the elements of a situation that is taking place and using our analytical skills to come up with the best alternatives and the best possible solution. However, we also understand, that's why we need to put this in context, that in most Eastern cultures, problem solving doesn't have the same role that it has in Western cultures. Countries differ. For example, in the orientation towards internal control, okay, Canada, United States, United Kingdom, etc., then the environment is assumed to be changeable, okay? So creativity focuses on attacking problems directly. So, and I'm going to stop here. Remember the locus of control that you talked about in your organizational behavior class. Internal locus of control means I have control of things. I should be able to fix this. I should be able to learn how to fix this, and I will do it. That's the internal control that we have talked about. However, in external control cultures, China, Czech Republic, Japan, etc., because individuals assume less control of the environment, creativity focuses less on problem solution. And I'm going to explain also this, like South Korea, etc. What happens there? Most of these cultures are cultures in which this is what you do. I'm the boss. I'm telling you what to do. I'm not asking you what you think. I'm not asking about your opinion. You just do it, right? So the part of creativity is not really in problem solving. And actually, I have to be honest, because I also come from a culture in which most of the times our creativity has been hindered, has been put a lot of obstacles. I remember long time ago, dinosaur age, yes. And again, this was maybe my grandma, my grandpa, very long time ago. They were never asked, what do you think? They were never asked, how do you think we should solve this? They were just given orders. So that is a challenge that we have on top, okay? Meaning we haven't been trained to solve problems by ourselves. We haven't been trained to be creative by ourselves. We haven't been trained or even encouraged to solve problems by ourselves. So I must make emphasis on this because once again, this is a skill we need to develop in the next few weeks. I'm going to, in this interview exam, oral exam that we're going to have, I'm going to make sure that you're able to answer questions, that you can put your thoughts into words. And that's why this is so important, okay? Now, and I'm going to read from our book also. Similarly, cultures emphasizing a specific orientation, like Denmark, France, Sweden, etc., are more likely to challenge the status quo and seek new ways to address problems than cultures emphasizing a diffuse culture like China, India, Nigeria, and Singapore, in which loyalty, wholeness, and long-term relationships are more likely to inhibit individual creative efforts. So we need to begin with this elephant in the room, meaning if we don't work first internally with my self-awareness, with my understanding that I may have been raised in a different way in which, and I'm going to give you an example. Me, yes, I am your teacher, I'm your instructor, but I'm not perfect. I make a lot of mistakes too. And I always tell students, could you please help me understand if I'm understanding this wrong? And a lot of my students tell me, teacher, but how am I going to help you? You're the teacher. I'm not supposed to that. Again, it's different. No, I'm not perfect. I actually appreciate when you give me feedback, when my students send me emails like, oh, remember, actually, I just corrected myself a few weeks ago, right? A few days ago, sorry. I had to change the deadline for the other class for the when you had to upload your team virtual meeting video. Remember, I made a mistake, of course. I had set up the deadline as May 19, and very kindly, and I really appreciate it. A student, thank you, send me an email. Teacher, I think the deadline is incorrect. Oh, thank you so much for helping me realize. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And then I fixed it, right? Okay. Now, for me, that's something not only that it's normal for me, but I encourage my students to help me please realize whenever I do things that are wrong, because why? I'm not perfect. And here in our Western culture, you are going to help most of the times. Your managers, your directors, coordinators, supervisors, they're also going to ask for your feedback, for your opinion, in which if you just say, nothing, I don't have feedback, I don't have opinion, that's not what is expected. You're going to be perceived as a person who's not part of the team, as a person who doesn't be part of this team. Also, remember, I also shared with you, I think, that many of the companies we send interns from VCC, right, from our business management diploma, they have shared with us in the feedback that, you know what, the student you sent me, yeah, he or she is really good, but he or she doesn't speak to anyone, doesn't talk to anyone, and doesn't talk to me. I'm the boss, and doesn't come to me and chat with me like in the coffee room or anything. There's no interaction, no connections. And I know, again, in many cultures, that is what is expected, right? I have been told by many students in the past that even some directors or the president of the company in many organizations in many countries, they even have a different elevator. They even have a different office in which workers, employees never go there because almost the boss is almost like a god, right? But that's not the way things are done in our Western culture. And that's why I need to explain this, because I believe that one of the most important blocks that we have to everything that we're going to talk about is not out there. It's without ourselves. It's without ourselves, because we were never asked by our elders, share your opinion. I'm going to give you another example. My mom, my grandpa, and my grandmother, they were very conservative and traditional. But I think I have shared with you that my parents are very open-minded. My parents were hippies in the 70s. So they were always very open-minded. So from the time I was a little girl, that's why I'm like a fake Mexican, I guess. From the time my brother and I, we were little kids, every important family decision was made by the four of us. My mom and my dad would sit me and my brother down when I was 6, 7 years old, my brother maybe 5 years old, and they will share. Like, you know what? My dad would share, I have been offered a job in another city with a better salary, etc. However, me accepting this job means a change for the whole family. So I cannot make this decision by myself. I need to make this decision by listening to you. What do you have to say, the pros and the cons, and let's make the decision together. That's how I grew up, right? However, my mom, my grandma, and my grandpa, when they knew, for example, how my mom and my dad would do this, they were like, why are you asking your children? You shouldn't ask them. They should do whatever you tell them to do. And my mom and my dad were always like, no, no, of course not. I'm not, no, I would never do that. I need to make sure I'm respecting my children's opinions, and I want to know their opinion too, because this is an important family decision. But again, my grandma and my grandpa, like, no, you're crazy. You don't ask the children. You just tell them what to do. Okay. This example I just gave you, I can imagine, and many of you are probably laughing, right? I know. Because I know for many of you, this probably sounds crazy. Why did your mom and dad ask you what you were thinking when you were 6 or 7 or 8 years old, right? Well, because my creativity, my opinion, I was always raised to share my thoughts, my opinions. Therefore, that helped me. However, when you grow in an environment in which your opinion is never taken in consideration, or when you try to give your opinion is diminished, or you are even, I don't know, somebody gets angry at you by sharing your opinion, those become internal blocks that we have towards creativity and problem solving. So I know I have taken almost half of this class in this point, but none of the things that I'm going to cover very quickly, because it's just theory. It's just theory that you can copy, yes, in your glossary, and we're going to see them very quickly. But none of those things that I will cover in the other half hour of this class are going to make sense until first you stop and pause. Okay, yes, I have been maybe not very encouraged to use my ideas, maybe not encouraged to share, or maybe I have. And if you have, congratulations. But then that means, how can I make sure I improve the way I use my creativity to solve problems as a manager? That's why, you see, and now we can talk. Now we are speaking in the same language, and I'm sure this is going to go perfectly well now. So very quickly, because you know the steps and you can read them, make sure you understand them and you take notes about this, because in your exam, in the midterm, yes, they're going to ask you what are the steps of the model of problem solving according to our book. So we need to know the steps. Very good. So first, very simple, define the problem. Differentiate opinion from a real fact. Opinion, yes, that's not a problem. It's your opinion, and thank you, that's feedback. But facts, those are the ones we need in order to first define the real problem. Identify standards, determine whose problem is it, okay, who is involved, etc., etc. Make sure everybody's taken in consideration, and every segment of the problem, every aspect of the problem is taken in consideration. Now, this is when the creativity comes in. Generate alternative solutions. And this is why, and again, I love AI, because AI can help us. Actually, I told you, right, for our other class in our business plan, I told you, try to use AI as a starter, but then you have to analyze the alternatives that DeepSeek or AI is giving you. And that's exactly this part. We need to generate alternative solutions. And even AI, if you don't feed AI with the right prompts, you're not going to get good alternatives. And you know that too. So even creating good prompts, that requires you to use your creativity, right? Very good. So we need to know this for short and long-term solutions. Okay, how is this going to solve? Is it going to be solved 100%, 20%, 50%? What are the different alternatives, the pros and the cons? Remember, I always ask you in class, make a little list, pros and cons about this. That's generating solutions, and that is helping also your creativity. And these are just examples, okay, about alternatives. For example, the alternative solutions being proposed are consistent with the organization. Alternatives take into consideration short and long term. Alternatives solve the problem that has been identified, etc., etc. And again, you can read about this. Step 3, evaluate and select an alternative. I will actually ask you, and this is also a competency and a skill that you can develop, learn to list or rank the importance. Like, as this is the best solution, this will be our second solution, this will be our third last solution, maybe, because it has not so many benefits. But when you're able to evaluate and select the best alternative, you are more likely also to be more successful. Okay, so number three, evaluate and select an alternative. Now, this is from your book also, but I wanted to share this with you because I thought it was really, really good. Nothing in the world can take the place of perseverance. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful people with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. However, persistence and determination alone are the key, and I cut it, but they are the key, okay, to really reaching. So why did I want to talk about perseverance? Because you might say, teacher, I'm sorry, I don't think I'm very creative yet. So perseverance is the power of yet, okay? Anything, you can learn anything in this world, but you know what it takes? First, it takes convincing yourself, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put all my effort, all my passion, and all my attention in achieving this. I'm going to set myself a deadline and I'm going to do it. And you are all able to do it because you're amazing and talented. You just need to convince yourself first that you are already talented. So you're going to get there. Now, a model of problem solving. Oh, step number four, implement and follow up on the solution. As you can see in the book, one of the problems is that we don't follow up on the solutions. Okay. Yes, we defined the problem, we gave alternatives, we analyzed and chose the best alternative, but we have problems with implementation or the follow-up of the solution, right? And this is a problem that we usually have. So you have an impediment slows down progress or creates an obstacle for achieving a goal. So it's not the same, okay? Constraint is a limitation, but an impediment is really slowing down or an obstacle, okay? That's different. Constraints then are boundaries or limitations and are often considered inherent. We're always gonna have constraints all the time. It's little challenges that we're going to find on the way. But impediments are temporary obstacles that can be overcome, right? Or potentially slowing things down, but not necessarily preventing completion. Now, why did I want to mention that? Because then you have in your book constraints on the analytical problem solving. And here is when we have those problems and we need to understand what is the most challenging part for me? Defining the problem? That might be, okay? So the first thing we need to do, accept the problem definition. Make sure you and your team, you are aware of the objective. And this actually, when I have stayed after class and worked with some of the teams that are going to be presenting in class, this has been one of the main problems. When I ask them, okay, tell me what's the objective of the class, most people freaks out. And they're not able to answer my question and say, wait, this is very easy. You're not able to identify the objective? Well, maybe we need to develop then, what do I need to do in order to define the problem? Again, the more you know about the problem, the more you're likely to first define what is the real problem. Then when generating alternatives, okay, that could be a constraint too. And the constraint is, for example, a few possible alternatives are usually known. Maybe the constraint is we don't have a lot of options. We only have two. That's already a constraint. It's a limitation. Or the first acceptable solution is usually accepted, but it may not be the best, right? Alternatives are based on what was successful in the past. Why is this a constraint? Well, because in the past, the context was different. The world was different, right? Things and how we used to solve problems before COVID are very different to how we solve problems now after COVID, right? So these are constraints. Another one, evaluating and selecting an alternative. What if the information is limited? I cannot get teacher. Yes, you're telling me that it's important for me to know everything about this situation. Well, but what if the information is not available? That is a constraint already. Search for information maybe occurs only close to home. What if, for example, and I'm going to refer to our other class assignment, what if you're trying to define your target market, right, for your entrepreneurial business opportunity? Let's imagine, right? And you say, well, yeah, let's just do it here. It's very easy. But you don't maybe look for other areas. You don't look for more information. You get out of your comfort zone or think outside of the box, right? So that could be a constraint. The type of information, sometimes information is not complete. Gathering information is costly. Sometimes it is because you have to buy some of the databases online and or from different providers, and that is expensive too. Preferences for the best alternatives are not always known. Or, and I'm going to add something here, evaluating and selecting an alternative is given to AI. That's another constraint. The AI is not in my class, remember? Right, that's another constraint. And the implementation and follow-up, again, the constraint is that we have resistance to change. So we don't follow up, we don't make sure, or when a change is already at place, we prefer to go back to what we used to do in the past, and it's really hard. Sometimes political and organizational processes must be managed. So it's not so easy. So many people are involved that the follow-up and the implementation may be very challenging, or it may take a very long time to implement a solution. Maybe you don't see results immediately. Results are going to be seen through a year. Like right now, what I'm telling you, right, that we have to do many things in the next few weeks. So we get ready for the internship. But many of you think, the internship, we still have a lot of time. Well, not really. Not really. We only have a few more weeks ahead of us. But the sooner you implement the solution, you're going to start seeing the results, not immediately, maybe in 2 or 3 or 4 months or 6 months. And sometimes that is like, oh, no, it's too long. I don't want to make this implementation because it's going to take too long, right? Now, impediments. Most people assume that creativity is just one-dimensional. Almost everyone has created blocks that inhibit our creativity. Remember, I was talking about that at the beginning. First, most of us misinterpret creativity as being one-directional, and which means is just generating ideas. We're often not aware of the multiple strategies available for being creative, so our repertoire is very restricted. Second, all of us have developed certain conceptual blocks in our problem-solving activities, and we are largely on the way of our own blocks, right? They inhibit us from solving certain problems effectively, and these blocks are largely personal as opposed to interpersonal, organizational, so skill development is required to overcoming, and that's why this chapter is so important. Now, I'm not going to go very deep into this, but your quiz is going to ask you, they're going to tell you, this person, what is the type of creativity that this person put into place? And we have 4 types, and you can find this in your book, okay? Incubation, imagination, improvement, and investment, okay? These methods, these are some of the most sophisticated approaches to creativity. So for example, incubation, be sustainable, capitalize on teamwork, involvement, coordination, cohesion, empowering people and building trust. Incubation, right? And Mahatma Gandhi, of course, is an example of this type of creativity. Imagination, be new, experimentation, exploration, risk-taking, transformational ideas, revolutionary thinking, unique visions. Then we have improvement, be better, okay? Ray Kroc is the founder of McDonald's, okay? Well, 2 founders, and he was the businessman who actually created the idea of, why don't we create hamburgers in a faster way? So I hope, if you don't know his story, it's very interesting. Improvement, let's improve how we make hamburgers, right? Be better. Incremental improvements, process control, systematic approaches, careful methods, clarifying problems, etc. And finally, the founder of Honda, okay? Investment, and our book talks about this, right? Investment, be first. Rapid goal achievement, faster responses than others, competitive approaches, attack problems directly. So all these examples are in your book. So make sure you read about them, because you're going to be asked about this in your quiz. But most importantly, where do you place yourself? And this is not, again, a one-dimensional question, because the question will be how I place myself in my creativity, teacher, under which circumstances, under which context, because it's not the same my creativity with Mr. Jenkins, right? When we talk about where should we go on vacation next year, that's the same creativity as in, oh my God, we have a real situation with a student who needs extra support. How am I going to solve that? Different types of creativity, right? But they are part of us. So look at the incubation imagination, how they're more into the flexibility part, how the improvement and investment are more into control part. The imagination and investment then are more into the external, whereas the incubation and improvement are more into the internal, right? So make sure you take notes about this. I'm going to continue also talking about this, and this is also in your book. Imagination and improvement emphasize opposite approach to creativity. I already mentioned that. It's important to point out that no approach to creativity is better than the other. Remember, I told you, it depends on the context, right? Different circumstances call for different approaches. So you may think, oh, for example, if you go to incubation, imagination, investment, improvement, you're going to see magnitude, okay, the magnitude or the speed of how you're going to solve a situation or a problem. So these are just dimensions for you to take in consideration. And finally, examples of situations in which each approach is effective. For example, incubation, existence of a diverse community with strong values, need for collective effort and consensus, a power workforce, and that's where Gandhi is usually our best example, right? The imagination, need for a brand new breakout product or services, emerging markets, resource needed for experimentation, and that's Steve Jobs, right? With the new iPhone and Mac, etc. We know that. Improvement, be better. Requirement for quality, safety, and reliability. High technical specialization, effective standardized processes, and that is the creator of the founder of McDonald's, yes. And finally, investment, our president of Honda. Fast results are necessary, okay? Highly competitive environments and emphasis on bottom line outcomes. So make sure you also have this in your notes because they're going to give you some examples. And in the quiz, you will have to identify what kind of approach they're using. Now, the mental obstacles that we have are constraints. And these are some examples, okay? You probably read in your book. If not, pause my video and go to your book and read about this, okay? Perry Spencer magnetron led to the invention of the microwave. And then Spencer and silver glue led to the development of the Post-its. Remember, we have talked about the Post-its before. Okay. What happened here is that the magnetron was actually an invention that was very expensive, and you can read about it in your book. Companies, they spent a lot of money on this invention, and at the end, it didn't work. So from a mistake, only one person, which was Percy Spencer, thought, I need to find a way to make sure that this magnetron, okay, it doesn't work, but there's gotta be a place, a situation, something in which the technology that we created here, which doesn't work for what we created it, can be useful. I can find something in which I can put this into practice, or I can put this into giving us a solution for something else. And that means getting out of your mental blocks, thinking differently. And the same happened with the Spencer Circle. Remember, we talked about this, how the Post-its were invented by mistake, they were actually trying to invent something else, right? They were trying to make something else. They also invested a lot of money in it, but at the end, it didn't work. But then this person kept thinking, there's gotta be something, an application to this invention we came up with, which doesn't work for what it was meant for, but there's gotta be something. And that's when he came up with the idea to use that glue for Post-its. And remember, we have already Googled how much money 3M makes out of Post-its. So you see, those are the benefits of getting out of our mental blocks. Now, the concept of blocks can be based on 4 different reasons: constancy, commitment, compression, or complacency. And you have this in your book, so read it very quickly. Okay, constancy, vertical thinking, defining a problem in only one way without considering alternative views. One thinking language, not using more than one language to define and assess the problem. And here by language, we don't mean English or French, okay? That's not what we talk by language. By language is use words that are different, bring synonyms, bring other ideas that might get you, okay, out of your comfort zone. That's constancy. Commitment, Stereotyping based on past experiences. Present problems are seen only as the variation of past problems. This is a huge mistake. I know, and that's why nobody knows how to deal with AI, and nobody knows, should we allow it? No, yes. Yes, we should, but we should teach our students how to use AI in an ethical way so we don't hinder their ability to still solve problems creatively. You see? But that requires a lot of thinking outside the box. And that is a problem for very traditional and conservative educational organizations because they want to keep doing things as they were doing them in the past, right? I know. Ignoring commonalities, failing to perceive commonalities among elements that initially appear to be different. They look different, but instead of paying attention, we go, no, it's nothing. It's not important. Again, it's very important to think outside the box. This is even the lessons learned from previous examples, from previous case situations, the context was different. So it cannot be the exact same solution. Compression, distinguishing figure from ground, not filtering our irrelevant information or finding needed information. We don't do the research. Remember also we learned about that in our other class, those girls who won the Dragon's Den, they did a lot of research. They didn't really just stick to, oh, this is it, we're perfect. No, they went out. They did a lot of research. Artificial constraints, defining the boundaries of a problem too narrowly. Oh, this is a real problem. So this is how we're going to solve it. Perfect. And sometimes we don't think outside of the box, the connections with other elements and variables. Complacency, non-inquisitiveness, not asking enough questions, and non-thinking, a bias toward activity in place of the mental work. So we already have our bias, we're set up here, we're not thinking outside of this. So these are some of the conceptual blocks that inhibit creative problem solving. My recommendation, this is a good recommendation, if you can pause my video, please, and you can ask DeepSeek, because DeepSeek can give us examples. And this is a very good way in which it can help us understand things better. Go to DeepSeek right now, pause the video, okay, and ask the video, okay, DeepSeek, help me understand the concept of conceptual blocks in creative problem solving with the topics or with the facts, with the elements of constancy, commitment, compression, and complacency. Give me real life examples or give me real life situations in a work environment in which I can see this. Again, as I said, pause the video, and I know it may be a very long, yes, a very long statement that you're going to write there, but the better you write this, the better answers you're going to get from DeepSeek. Okay, so again, DeepSeek, please give me real life work scenarios in which I can see the conceptual blocks of constancy, commitment, compression, and complacency in creative problem solving. And read some of those examples. Those are going to help you understand better. Now, as we were saying, vertical thinking, okay, the bonus way of thinking. Vertical thinking is done with the left brain. There's nothing wrong with vertical thinking, nothing wrong. But I have also to tell you this. Eastern cultures tend to be more encouraging of vertical left brain thinking, whereas it's a combination. Western cultures at work, at least I'm speaking about work managerial environments, okay, tend to promote a little bit more of lateral thinking. And what's the difference here? The vertical thinking has to do with logical, sequential, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, period. Everything is done by the book, procedures, okay? We never change anything. Everything is done exactly the same. Whereas lateral thinking is more like, wait, is it really 1, 2, 3, 4? What about if between 4, we maybe put a 4.5, maybe we need to add something. And also before the 2, maybe we need a 1.1 to lead us into a 2. So that means, wait, I told you 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, but maybe there are many ways in which we can do this much better. That's lateral thinking. And that's what I'm trying to promote in all of you, my dear students. So I told you from the beginning, every assignment I give you has been designed to help you, to encourage you, to force you to develop your lateral right brain thinking. So you become more creative and more independent as we go on through our course, okay? And you can understand that this is exactly what we need when we are recruiting managers here in Canada. So as I already mentioned, yes, vertical thinking, lateral thinking, I'm not going to mention it again. Make sure you understand just this part, because again, in your quiz, they're going to ask you, but the quiz is lateral, the quiz is actually vertical thinking because it's about theory, right? But lateral is when I ask you real life examples, when I ask you put this in practice, right? And that meeting, that virtual meeting that you should be working on should be completely lateral thinking, not vertical thinking. Why? Because you need to be independent and make suggestions in your meeting. So I'm sure you're being very successful with your meetings. Yes, I am sure. So multiple thinking languages, this is what I was talking about. The more languages available to problem solvers, the more creative the solution will be. And this means, yes, use words, but also bring symbols and also use the touching, the smelling, the listening, not only the words, feelings, emotions, and visual imaginary. So every time I ask you to work in a reflection, either if it's on video or on paper, this is exactly what I'm trying to force you to develop, or to help you, or to encourage you to develop a multiple thinking language and more into a lateral thinking language, so that you start feeling comfortable expressing your feelings, your emotions, your opinions, because that's going to make you more creative. You already are, but you're going to feel more confident when sharing that creativeness that is already part of you. I know. Other thought languages are available, however, such as nonverbal, symbolic, etc., 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 happiness, fear, anger. Remember, the more languages available in problem solvers, the better and more creative their solutions can be. And I have told you this before. I haven't been in all those jobs that I have had because I was the smartest. I'm not. I'm not. If you knew that every time I take a certification exam, I always fail the first time I take my exams. Why? Because I'm more into the lateral thinking, not so much into the, the facts. And the poor people who are perfect at memorizing, yes, they passed all these exams, but then they have problems when they have interviews or in real life they have to solve problems. It's challenging. Well, I'm the other way around. I don't pass exams. It's really hard for me. I always fail the first time, and that's okay, because I take that as a learning, as a feedback opportunity. Okay, that means now I know what I have to do better next time, but that is really hard for me. But the reason why I have all those positions and I have traveled all around is because of my multiple thinking languages and all that lateral thinking. So trust me, if you promote, if you encourage yourself to develop this skill, you're going to reach anything you want to achieve, always. Now, commitment can also serve as a conceptual block to creative problem solving. Once individuals become committed to one point of view, they're committed to that. So I don't move from here. And this happens a lot with organizations too, bureaucratic organizations. Like, no, this is the way we have always done things. Why are we going to change them? And this is already a problem that we have, right? Because we ourselves, we're already giving ourselves a block. Like, no, we're not going to do things differently. Well, all the inventions and all the people doing things creatively is because they were able to do things differently, right? I know. Perceptual stereotyping, defining a problem by using preconceptions based on past experiences. We already said that. It doesn't have to be that way. Ignoring commonalities, shared traits, characteristics, or features. Those are commonalities, okay? That different things, people, or ideas possess. Creativity is blocked when we individuals fail to find the common thread, that exists between dissimilar problems. The ability to find one definition or solution for two seemingly dissimilar problems is a characteristic of creative individuals. So yes, this is the situation, but wait a minute. I read the other day in one of my books that they solved this in this way, that the situation was different. Yes, but how can I adapt that solution to this problem that I have here? That's when you don't ignore commonalities, when you try to make connections. That's why I ask you to make connections in your reflections, right? Either on video or on paper. Connections are very important. And also we need to learn how to make those connections. The inability to do this can overload a problem solver by requiring that every problem encountered has to be solved individually. There's no way. We're all part of a system. Now, I already mentioned then that conceptual blocks also occur as a result of a compression of ideas, looking too narrowly to a problem. Now, the artificial constraints, sometimes people place boundaries around problems or constraints, and sometimes you make them impossible to solve from the beginning, right? People assume that some problem definitions or alternative solutions are off limits, so they ignore them. So, for example, thinking, no, this can never be solved. We're not going to, no, that's not even a solution. Well, take it in consideration. Don't start saying it's not possible until you really haven't confirmed if it's or it's not possible. So you see, again, most of the blocks are within ourselves. Now, complacency. Ooh, I like this one because this block is based on fear, ignorance, insecurity, and laziness. I know this doesn't happen in our class. That's the good thing. Never in our life. Complacency is not part of the reason why we're not creative, because these are things that we cannot see these things in our class, right? Fear, ignorance, insecurity, or laziness. So I don't think I need to tell you guys. This is something you need to work with within yourselves. There's nothing I can do against that. I can prepare all the activities and all the classes and everything to help you and encourage you to be more creative and become better managers. But if you do not understand that maybe complacency, it's already your block, there's nothing I can do against that to help you improve. Now, the stages in creative thought. So you think you need three things to be an original thinker, right? First, you have to have a tremendous amount of information. Then you have to be willing to pull ideas because you're interested. And some people could do it, but they don't bother. They're interested in doing something else, and it's fun to come up with an idea. And if nobody wants it, I don't give a damn. Okay, that's from the book. I'm not saying bad words. It's from the book. It is just fun to come up with something strange and different. And then you must have the ability to get rid of the trash which you think of. You cannot only think of good ideas. Now, this I copied from the book because each one of us, we're going to have different ways to deal with how we are going to help ourselves improve. So you have these 4 elements in your book: preparation, incubation, illumination, and verification. These are the stages in creative thought. So try to, once you read this in your book, try to define, where is it that I'm having problems? Is it in the preparation? Maybe I'm not doing enough research. Maybe I'm insecure because I don't know enough. Well, then get ready. Then read, then research, so you feel you feel ready, right? Then incubation of ideas, illumination, and finally the verification. And you have this in your book. I hope you are able, please, to make a post for each one of them. Not only it's going to be in the quiz, but try to identify. This is how we come up with creative thought. Make sure you identify which one maybe you need to pay more attention to and write it down in your notes, okay? Ways to improve problem definition. This is called synetics, okay? Make the strange familiar and the familiar strange. This is in your exam. Make sure you know this. The concept synetics means making the familiar strange and the strange familiar. This means use analogies, personal, direct, symbolic, and fantasy. For example, this is an example from your book. Suppose you have defined a problem as low morale among members of your team. They're demotivated, they're not encouraged to come to work, they're very demotivated. You may form an analogy or a metaphor by answering questions such as the following about the problem. What does this remind me of? See, when I ask you to make connections, I know, I know what I'm doing. What does this make me feel like? What is this similar to? What is this opposite of? Those are exactly the connections that help you encourage, grow in your creativity. Making sure you're able to connect. I have never seen this before. Of course, maybe this is something new for you, but try to find a connection to something you have done in the past, something you have heard in the past, something you have seen in the past. You need to have been in the same situation to understand the connections. So please make sure synectics is something you also use to improve your creativity. And we're almost heading towards the end, using analogies. There are 4 types of analogies: personal analogies, direct analogies, symbolic analogies, and fantasy analogies. Make sure, please, you take notes about this, at least some keywords, okay, in your notes, because this is also going to be in our quiz and in our midterm as well, okay? For example, if I were the problem, how would I feel? What would I like? What could satisfy me? That's a personal analogy. Direct, in which individuals apply fact, technology, and common experience to a problem. Symbolic, in which symbols or images, for example, modeling a problem mathematically or creating a flow, yes, a process flow chart, maybe. Fantasy analogies, okay? In my wildest dreams, how would I wish this problem to be resolved? I wish all employees could work with no supervision. Fine, it doesn't have to be like that, but using analogies can help you get closer to, okay, this is not possible, but if I thought about it, if it were possible, what would I do? Maybe write some alternatives, and sometimes the best ideas come from the craziest ways of thinking. So ways to generate even more alternatives, deferred judgment or the brainstorming. Remember how important is brainstorming. We cannot judge other people sharing something. And this is something I have even made very clear in our class. I really felt very upset in my first or second class with you guys, in which somebody shared something and everybody laughed. And I told you, this is unacceptable. This is very disrespectful, and I'm not going to allow this in my classroom. So I understand you may have different ways of dealing with people sharing opinions, but this I will not accept, not only because it's disrespectful, but it can be also harassment or bullying. And I'm never going to accept this. Not only me, but BCC has very specific rules and very specific policies about not allowing this to take place in our classrooms. So I need to make sure you understand that part, because that's also why we are not creative, because we're used as people laughing at our ideas. Do you understand how much you're affecting other people's self-confidence? How much you're affecting the effectiveness of many managers who can be amazing managers in the future, and they are already doubting themselves because somebody laughed at them? So never, never, please take this with you. We never give judgment in brainstorming. If we have to learn how to take opinions respectfully and how to take feedback respectfully, then learn about it. But this can never be accepted, because that's how important brainstorming is, okay? Expand current alternatives, thinking crazy. That's what we need. But if people are going to be laughing at me, how am I going to be having crazy ideas? Please, guys, this will never happen once you are usually out there in an environment, a work environment, unless this is a toxic environment. We never laugh at nobody's opinions, okay? Combined or unrelated attributes. And again, this is another example. Is there anything else? Is the reverse true? Is this a symptom of a more general problem? Who sees the problem differently? Let me talk to somebody who sees this completely opposite. So this person helps me see what I also have to take in consideration. And that is also another problem that we have, thinking that we have to work only with people who think like ourselves. There's nothing worse in the world than working with friends and with people who think like you, because guess what? You're never going to achieve your best, because you're never giving yourself the chance to learn from people who think differently than you. You don't have to agree, but learning to see other perspectives and points of view respectfully is going to make you a better problem solver as well. Techniques for problem definition, make this strange familiar. We already talked about this. Rules of brainstorming, we already said this too. No evaluation, no laughing. Wild ideas and crazy ideas have to be encouraged. Quantity before quality, and build on the ideas of others. So I hope to see this in your meeting for the other class. Combine or unrelated attributes, which is called morphological synthesis. The problem is written down. Then the attributes of the problem are listed. Alternatives to each attribute are also listed. And finally, different alternatives from the attributes are combined. So this is an example. The chart, this is the first part. I'll show you the second part in a minute. So for example, problem statement. The employee takes extended lunch breaks every day with friends in the cafeteria. So instead of taking half an hour, he stays an hour in the cafeteria. So what's the time? First, the facts, right? More than an hour, amount of time, 30, 90, 45, starting time at noon, starting time maybe later, maybe before. Place, cafeteria, with whom, friends, frequency, daily. Now the alternatives. What if instead of an hour, we just give 30 minutes? What if we start the lunch at 11? What if we do it in the workstation instead of the cafeteria? Okay, why if we do it not only with friends, but with coworkers? What if we do it weekly? Not so this is an example of the morphological synthesis. And then you have another option, 90 minutes, and another alternative, 45 minutes. And then you list the different alternatives. And then you combine the attributes. For example, what about a 30-minute lunch break beginning at 12:30 in the conference room with the boss once a week? So maybe a 90-minute lunch beginning at 11:30 in the conference room with coworkers twice a week. Maybe, so you're actually, instead of just stay every day with your friends, we're going to make it mandatory that once a week, you have another option. You have another option. Maybe once a week, we extend it to 90 minutes instead of 1 hour, so you don't feel the need and you are more encouraged to come back on time, etc. This is just an example from the book. For example, relational algorithm 2, applying connecting words that force a relationship between two elements in a problem. The second technique for combining related attributes is problem solving. The relational algorithm involves applying connecting words that force a relationship. For example, customers among service, customers as service, customers and service, customers for service, service near customer service, before customer service, through customers, or service when customers. This relational algorithm is a real technique that can also help you understand a problem. The problem is our customers are dissatisfied with our service. Okay, so let's define what the real problem is. What is it? And you can see the examples there. And again, you don't have to use this technique, just make sure you know it, okay? Because it can help you. Once you need it, you can always go back and research. For example, these are also some other examples, some other suggestions we give you. Give yourself some time to relax before you start being creative. Find a place where you can think. Don't do your homework when there's a lot of noise or at work, where that cannot happen. You cannot be creative under those circumstances. Talk to other people about ideas, not only your friends, to talk to people you don't usually talk to. Ask other people for their suggestions about your problems. Read a lot. Reading is my key. If I could show you, I don't know if I can show you. See? Books everywhere. And I think in the other class, you also were able to see our library downstairs. So reading is the secret of our success, to tell you the truth. We read so much that we can always like, you know what? I read about this before. You know what? I have seen this before happening. The more you read, the more material, the more information, the more baggage you have to be able to make decisions in a better way. Protect yourself from idea killers, okay? And those idea killers can be people telling you, and that's why many of my former friends are not my friends anymore. Because when I used to share things, oh, your idea is so stupid and dumb and blah, blah, blah. And then I said, instead of getting sad, I said, you know what? Oh, I was going to tell you her name. Sorry, I cannot tell you her name. But anyway, I told her, friend, I really appreciate we have been friends for a very long time. But every time I'm with you, I feel you always diminish my opinion. And I don't feel comfortable with that. So as much as I care about you, my dear friend, I don't think we can be friends anymore. And I did this when I was in college. And even now, we're acquaintances because we graduated from the same college and we're in the same group. And she tries to reach out and she's nice, but she still keeps doing the same. I don't need her in my life, right? You don't need people who are always affecting your self-esteem. You don't need those people, even if it's your family. In my case, remember I told you, I had to say no to a lot of my family because that was affecting my self-confidence as well. Now, make sure you understand this model of the analytical and creative problem solving. They're just putting everything in order. Everything we have talked about, yes, the constraints, the conceptual blocks, the analytical, the 4 approaches, is just how it's organized, okay? And finally, the 3 principles for fostering creativity in your teams with the people you work with. Well, let's begin with ourselves first, right? Then we'll talk about how we can foster creativity in others, but at least know this for your quiz. Pull people apart, put people together. So separate friends and put people who have never worked together before, so they are actually learning to listen to other people's ideas, right? Very good. Monitor and prod, talk to customers, hold people accountable, identify customers' expectations, both in advance, etc. This can also help you with the vision from outside. And reward multiple roles. Serve as an idea champion, serve as a sponsor, a mentor, rule breaker, etc. This you will do in the future once you are sure that you have already developed and encouraged all these skills within yourselves, and then you can foster others to also do so. And this is just how it's also structured. It's also in your book. And this is how I need to end my class today. And I'm sorry, I know I took an hour, 10 minutes. I'm so sorry. But you know, I get very excited with topics that are very important and very interesting to me, because my only interest in life, and you know this, is your success. My only interest in life, everything I do, is to make sure I just provide you with the tools you need to make the best out of your professional future. Boy, because I see how talented and smart and beautiful people you are, so you can do it. But I cannot go into your head, and I cannot go into your heart and yes, and tell you this has to change from within yourselves. So, my dear students, you know I care about you. I am very strict, of course I am, because I do understand that there are only certain ways to achieve greatness. And this is the last thing I would like to finish my class with. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created those problems. I have shared in the past with you that the only reason why I'm here in front of this camera teaching you this class, it's perhaps because I have made much more mistakes than anyone else in the world. And I hope that in the future, also by sharing my suggestions, my ideas, and my techniques, and my own experiences, I hope in the future you can learn to be much better than I am. Nothing will make me happier than seeing all of you not only succeeding at your best, but also, as I tell you, when you're rich and famous, please remember your instructor, Ada, so you can send me some flowers. Yes, and nothing makes me happier than seeing you succeed and reach your goals and achieve your dreams. Thank you very much for a wonderful class. I hope you have enjoyed it. And yes, I miss you. I'll see you next class, okay? Thank you. Bye.